Studio 5. You know, it's a question many couples don't know how to answer or don't even think about. How would you define a healthy sexual relationship in marriage?
Laura Brotherson is a marriage and family life educator, also the author of a groundbreaking book on intimacy entitled "And They Were Not Ashamed: Strengthening Marriage Through Sexual Fulfillment." She says there are a few key characteristics that define a healthy, intimate relationship. This is obviously a sensitive subject, and we wanted to sort of address it sensitively as well. But first of all, how important is sexual satisfaction in a marriage?
Well, I think a lot of couples are probably hearing that question and thinking, you bet. Of course, that's real important. A healthy sexual relationship, that's a part of what makes a marriage so strong. I mean, you've got emotional connection and you've got spiritual connection, but if you don't have any one of those, and especially the sexual dimension, you've really got a weakness or a vulnerability in your marriage.
We're going to get to your tips in just a second, but first you say that one of the reasons you feel so strongly about this is people aren't talking about this enough.
Sure, yeah, no, definitely. People have a hard time discussing sex, period, much less in kind of a intelligent conversation. But I think a lot of people don't understand what exactly is it that we're looking for in a healthy sexual relationship, because if couples don't know what they're trying to create, it's pretty hard to create it.
You have some great tips, and we're going to get to the first one, which was, you say it has to be mutually fulfilling, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, if you've got a healthy sexual relationship, you both feel that it is mutually satisfying, mutually fulfilling for both of you. And a lot of times there's kind of maybe, it's not so mutual. There might be a little bit more on one side or the other. And of course, to define that, that generally would mean regular orgasms for both husband and wife. But again, regular is pretty open for discussion. And, you've got a lot of circumstances and situations in a marriage that you've got to factor in. So thankfully, that's something that the husband and wife both get to define for them.
And communication becomes key, right, to accomplish this characteristic and really strengthen it in your marriage. You have to talk about it.
And that's so hard for couples to be able to do, for sure.
Your next tip is satisfactory frequency. What do you mean by this?
And that's a big one, because I think that there are a lot of couples that really feel like, he wants it more, she doesn't want it as much, or vice versa, as happens as well. But I really do want to kind of put a plug for the fact that I believe that couples can get to the point where they both feel like, yeah, we're being intimate about as much as I would like to be, and they both feel that way. I mean, that's an exciting thing for a couple to get to, but it does take a little bit of work for them.
But wait, how do you get to that point? Because you said oftentimes the guy would like to do it more, and the woman is like, I'm too busy with other stuff. So how do you get to that point where you're both saying, yeah, we're happy with it?
Well, that's kind of why I wrote a 400-page book. I mean, it's a little bit of work to get there, but there are a lot of factors involved. I mean, you've got, if she's not really fulfilled, if, it's hard to want something that you don't really like that much, if you've got negative thoughts or beliefs about sex, and so you kind of you have a hard time going there, if you're too preoccupied with family or kids and as a wife and you just don't make that a priority. I mean, there's kind of a lot of things. Relationship issues. I mean, there's a lot of things that kind of keep you at this desire gap, I call it. But as you start to work on some of the things that get in your way, which I walk couples through in my book, then they're able to get to that point where it's like, yeah, we're getting this. We're really getting this.
So it is possible to come to a mutual understanding on the frequency, because you do, it's a tongue-in-cheek joke that I think people throw around.
It is.
When it comes to sexual relationships and marriage. But you're saying the number, though it actually doesn't matter in terms of the number, it matters how people are satisfied meeting that need.
Exactly. Well, and think about it. If the intimacy is very satisfying and very mutually connecting, and you've got all of the elements of what make it great, then think about it. You are not starving all the time for it. But if it's never really good, if it's just kind of do your duty and get it done, well then yeah, it's like eating a Twinkie. You're always hungry.
You mentioned the thing about the open communication. What do we do there? How do we build that open communication? Because as you mentioned, sometimes people are awkward talking about this, and you feel weird, and so how do you do that?
It's very difficult, but that's the third thing, that they've got to be able to talk about it openly and honestly. And one of the best ways, I think, to do it to start is get a book and read the book. Because when you read something, they've already brought up some difficult subject. You don't have to bring it up. You don't have to be personally vested in that.
The book brings it up for you.
The book brings it up for you, and then all of a sudden you can talk about it. But think about it. If a husband husband and wife is not able to say, honey, you know, I really like it when we do this, or I really enjoy this, or, you know, it'd be kind of fun if we tried this. I mean, think about the context of that relationship for you to be able to communicate in that way. And that is a must. And I think that's probably one of the things that couples are lacking the most, but the ability to be able to have that conversation.
We're, of course, talking about building a healthy relationship within the bedroom, but you say part of that happens outside of the bedroom, to have that emotional connection in areas and topics other than just intimacy.
Absolutely. So that the fourth element, which I hadn't added at first, I just had those first three elements, and I thought, you know what, something's missing here, unless you can bring that relationship full circle. Because think about it, your sexual relationship happens in the context of the rest of your life. And so, and especially when you understand the female sexual wiring, they're wired very much that if the emotional connection is there, it's easier for them to move into the physical and the sexual dimension of the relationship. So you definitely need to have that overall connection, because once, I kind of like to think of the sexual response as a circle, because once lovemaking kind of ends, it's what happens for the next 2 or 3 days or 2 or 3 weeks, whatever it might be, that is kind of the foreplay, that emotional environment of the relationship. So very important.
Yeah, and great tips, as you mentioned, especially sometimes for guys. I think it's behind that bedroom's door, but it's really everything that goes on in your entire life.
The smartest man will figure out that it's what is outside the door that matters probably more.
The dishes matter.
The dishes matter.
That's what you're saying.
The dishes matter and the communication matters. Talk to me.
Absolutely. Laura, great tips. And again, our respect to you for tackling such an untapped into subject. So we posted Laura's entire article, Characteristics of a Healthy Intimate Relationship in Marriage, on our website for you to look at after the show. And of course, for more marriage advice and discussion, you can visit Laura's website, strengtheningmarriage.com.
Laura, thanks again for coming in.
Thank you.
We'll be back with more right after this.